everybody, and welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. My name is Daniel. I'm so glad that you've joined us, whether you're listening to this on the go or watching this on your screen. We're glad that you're here. We've got Miss Jessie Harper in the building, and we're so glad that you've joined us, Jessie. Thank you. And we have Miss Kelci Cundiff. Am I saying it right?
Yep.
Okay. I usually mispronounce people's names, so that's good. She's here as well. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. Just to give you a quick update and reminders of some things that are coming up. If you missed Sunday's sermon and service, you can catch up online at Facebook or on YouTube or at the church website at tlcc.church. But some of the things that are coming up are Drive Through Bethlehem, which is happening the first weekend in December. If you want to volunteer or participate, now is the time to sign up. We're filling lots of slots, and I'm sure there are a few places left for you to help out. And the person you need to see is Jessie. So call the church. Do you know the church number by heart yet?
263-4168.
Okay, so 660-263-4168. Or you can message her at TLCC Moberly.
Nope. Nope.
What is it?
Office at TLCC will get to me, or Jessie, Jessi at TLCC.
Office at TLCC.church or Jessie at TLCC.church. Man, I messed that one up royally. Okay, so anyway, the point is if you want to participate, Drive Through Bethlehem's a fun event. The first year they told me that there would be thousands of people, and I was like, no, that's not true. But then when you see all the cars lined up, it's actually crazy. And it's a good event to remind people of the Christmas story and why it matters. And good first touch for our community, also just a good enjoyment for community and people to go through it. So if you're interested in all sorts of roles, with whether it's helping just get things prepped, helping set up, you can participate in some of the scenes that are still available. And if you want more information, talk to Jessie. Do you know of any specific needs?
I think we might still be looking for someone to set up the luminaries each day. I think that one's still open. And then there might be a scene here that we need one or two people here or there.
Yeah. And then we always need help with setup and tear down. Yeah. So this coming Sunday, we are going to be pulling out some of the material in the garage. Depending on the weather, I heard there may be snow on Saturday, but if it's dry enough on Sunday, we might be pulling stuff out. Anyway, there you go. There's your announcement. If you're interested in Drive Through Bethlehem, you need to be aware of that and see us about it. Okay, we have a very special guest today, and I'm so grateful that she's here. Your husband beats me in pickleball all the time, and so I'm glad he's not here to brag about it, but the focus is on you today. This is Miss Kelci, and what I do every time for a new guest is you have 60 seconds. I'm going to put it on the clock, and it's your chance. If nobody's ever met you before, they know nothing about you. In 60 seconds, what's the most important things people need to know about who you are? Introduce yourself. 60 seconds. Are you ready?
Yep.
Go.
My name is Kelci. I'm 31, and I'm extremely rich.
Yes!
That's the important thing to know about me. I was born to parents who just die hard love the Lord with every fiber of their being. They just love God with everything in them, and their parents did, and their parents did. So just legacy of love, faith, just generational wealth of I was so incredibly blessed. And I met my husband, the love of my life, here at Central Christian College of the Bible, and we were married within a year, and we now have 3 lovely kids. And my job lately has just been passing on that generational wealth to the next generation. So that's me.
52.6 seconds. You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. That's such a beautiful way to put it. Generational wealth through what they can pass on and their love for Jesus. That's beautiful. So I told you when we talked about this podcast that I've been wanting to, it's been morphing a little bit where we're sharing people's stories, we're sharing people's testimonies, sometimes about their whole life, sometimes about specific events. And you said, hey, I've got a testimony that I would love to share. And so give us like a little overview, and then let us dive into it.
Yeah. So my testimony is a little bit different because like I grew up knowing Jesus. I grew up, like I said, I have parents that absolutely love the Lord. So I didn't necessarily ever doubt God's existence, because it was very obvious and evident in their life. Like I could see them changing, and I could see them growing, and see that relationship. And my dad's also very like sciencey, and he likes all the logical explanations for God and stuff too. So I even, grew up with a lot of those kinds of proofs for God in my life and stuff like that. So I never questioned God. He was always real to me. But for me, the biggest struggle in my life has been the question of suffering and evil in the world. It has been wrestling with, where is God in the midst of our suffering, and does he care? It's almost more the question of, is God good? Okay, I know you exist, and I believe you're there, but like, do you really have my best interests in mind, and are you who you say you are?
So Jesse, why don't you answer that question for us?
Well,
Because if we're going to take
I feel like she's coming with the answer.
Oh yeah,
She's worked through it.
She absolutely will, for sure. So this is interesting. We didn't plan this per se, but your husband deals a lot with apologetics and deals a lot with those kind of bigger questions. Do you guys talk about that in the home?
Yeah.
So you haven't...
I mean, probably less over the years because...
You already know what he thinks?
Yeah, I already know what he thinks. So
I was in his first class when he first started teaching.
His first one?
His very first one.
Really?
We broke him in.
Yeah, yep.
I know.
No, he's great.
Yeah.
We had a lot of great conversations in the classroom about that.
I never had Professor Harper as a teacher. I mean, he teaches me today, but never as like a, professor. So at what age did you start asking these questions, and did anything like predicate it or kick it off? Or, if you come from a legacy of, like you talked about, faithfulness and love, where does that come into your story?
And where did it all go wrong?
No. When did life get real for you?
Yeah,
is
no,
really
exactly.
what it is.
Unfortunately, it got real really, really young for me. Okay. So my parents were missionaries to Greece. We all moved to Greece when I was 6 years old. And they put me into public Greek school right away. The only thing I knew how to say was, "Can I play with you?" I knew that one phrase in Greek.
You're going to have to say it. Do you remember it?
"Boro na pexo" is...
That's so good.
Yeah. That was
you still got it.
A little bit.
Okay. All right.
Do Duolingo every now and then to try to keep it up. But that was all I knew how to say. And it was a very terrifying experience for a 6-year-old to go and not be able to speak the language. And it's the cultural difference was really, really shocking to me, because they didn't mind yelling at you and getting up in your face, and they wouldn't mind smacking a kid over the head and yelling, and they'd pull their ear and take them to the principal's office kind of thing. I mean, thankfully I was always too quiet of a kid to get that kind of attention, but it was kind of stressful and scary. I remember one of the first days of school for me, I got so stressed my nose started to bleed. Wow. And I didn't know who to go to, and I didn't know what to say, because I didn't
Other than, can I play
I was
with
just
you?
Pointing at my nose, and I was really terrified. So things were stressful, but things didn't, I never was confronted with evil until when my parents they were starting to do a bit of a church plant, and they were gathering different people from the community, and having all these meetings and trying to start this church. And one of the guys that they were trying to include in this church plant, I was about 10 years old, but he sexually assaulted me. And from that moment forward, my life was just shattered. Everything I thought, I had a perfect little idealized bubble of what I thought the world was, who God was, and then suddenly to be confronted at such a young age with just pure evil. Particularly being a mom now, I can't even imagine what would ever bring somebody to do something so awful to a child.
Sure.
But yeah, that for me it just shattered my world. And that's not something you process when you're 10 years old. So it wasn't something I processed until I was more of a teenager, much later. But that was really what was that defining moment for me in my life.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I know that that's not easy to do. For people who have gone through that before or have experienced abuse, I'm generally, the stories that I've heard or not participated in, but have heard people's stories, stuff like that remains hidden for a long time. Was that your story as well, or did your parents, were they aware of it, or how did that go?
No, actually, well, because again, like I had a really great relationship with my parents. So like they had this thing where if you were ever scared and you ever had a nightmare or something, you could just go to their room and they would pray for you, and then you could go back to bed. So like when I had that experience, that's like it's almost like the training that kicks in. Like, what do you do when you're scared? You go to mom and dad and you tell them the nightmare you just had. So essentially that's like the only thing I knew. Like, my brain didn't have any category for it. It didn't have any sort of like, when you wake up to something, like it is just a waking nightmare. So I just went to my parents and was just, I don't even know what I said, but I got the point across, and my dad was obviously just shaking with so much anger and so much just like they went through it too, just to have like the grief and of just feeling like they brought somebody unsafe into the home, and then he went and confronted him, and he denied it all at first, but then eventually it did all come out. But yeah, I mean, they were going to believe their child no matter what, but like obviously,
well, that doesn't always happen. Yeah. That's not always the standard.
Well, yeah, that's true. No, I thankfully never had to deal with the cover up aspect of it. I was able to always talk about it, and I think that's what got me through the childhood aspect of it, because I didn't have to hide it, and I had nightmares, woke up with nightmares for years and years afterwards.
Sure.
Just like the PTSD sort of memories coming back and like little things, and they would always sit with me and pray for me, and we'd talk about it. But that was kind of the at the childhood level of processing. And it kind of turned more into more bitterness and more of the questioning more as a teenager, but it was fairly innocent and clean of a process, I guess, as a kid, just because I had such a great relationship with my parents, thankfully.
Yeah. And it's hard even at that age to be able to process those things and know how it impacts you.
Yeah.
How long after that were you guys still in Greece?
That was fairly early on. So I think we stayed another 4 or 5 years, something like that. We were there for a total of 7-ish years. So that was about midway through, I think. Yeah. I'm
sure that was hard too, to stay in the same place with all the same stressors, knowing that is now a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully they cut out that person, obviously, instantly from my life. And they've been very, very protective of us. And pretty much they didn't let a lot of people stay over our house after that, because they were so protective. So, I mean, thankfully I didn't have too much fear of a repeat so much as it was like, there was still a lot of stress and stuff, and even not even just in my life, but in watching what my parents went through, because you'd think, because I mean, like that was someone who was supposed to be a Christian already. He wasn't somebody they were trying to reach out to. He was somebody they were trying to. He was like an ally. Yeah, he was. There was somebody they were trying to plant the church with, and then. I saw them go through all sorts of things with other missionaries, just like disgusting things that people with their words and hurtful things. And you're watching other Christians treat each other so poorly. And these are the people that are supposed to be, the examples of light to the world. And I mean, there was, embezzlement of money by like people working in the mission that Dad we had to confront, and there was a lot of darkness and a lot of frustration. I saw Mom and Dad really struggling with it as well. So just being a child watching your parents who have really great intentions and are trying their best to do things and serve God, and you're like, why? If they were trying so hard to do everything God was telling them to do, and that they kept coming across all these different people and all these different obstacles, and they would get kicked out of something for no fault of their own, just because somebody had control issues of something. And so there was a lot of jealousy and a lot of, infighting of things. And so to trying to reconcile the God I knew from my parents and their love and their journey, and who I had met even through the Bible and through my own experience, and then also dealing with my own negative experiences of the world and other Christians and Christianity, was there was a lot of just watching and absorbing as a kid, and then it just sort of kind of came to a head for me when we moved back to the States, and I really wrestled it and had a big kind of moment of truth, I guess, when we came back.
Well, before we get to the moment of truth, and Jesse, I want to ask you here in a moment about, because you've been on the other side of the church world before you started working at Timberlake, and seeing that side of things where it's like, these are supposed to be the people helping and supposed to be the people leading, many times are the people that hinder and cause difficulty. So I wanted to ask you about your experience in that in a moment, but just to kind of bring it back to the original thing you said. So it wasn't just the assault. I mean, obviously that's a huge piece, but the question of, God, are you good in the midst of this evil? All of that plays into it. What your parents were going through, what the church was going through. Mm-hmm. If we're doing all this good stuff, why do these things happen? Mm-hmm. People who are supposed to be God's servants and helping are living this kind of way and creating this problem. It almost seems like, all right, God, you called the church your bride, and yet this is not acting like a bride. And so that, am I hearing you correctly? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's all of that wrapped together.
It's not one thing too. It just kind of, it builds up on each other, and for sure. Yeah.
So before we get to the come to Jesus moment when you got back to the States, I'm just curious, you guys have gone through some stuff, you and Walt, especially in the church world, of, dealing with great people and also difficult people. Has this come up with, like, you're supposed to be the people helping, and now it seems like you're getting in the way?
I don't know if I've ever thought about it in those terms, but I definitely have been in the boat of, where's God in all this? We are, like, I feel like I'm following you and doing stuff, and yet there's hindrance after hindrance. And I guess I never really identified it with people that are supposed to be my ally. So that's an interesting thought. But I've been in that boat of, what am I doing? So,
is there an underlying assumption, and maybe you're going to get to this in a moment, but is there an underlying assumption that if I am following God, then I expect not things to be easy, but I expect the goodness to kind of be ahead of me, and I'll just keep walking in that? Like, yeah. And is that an appropriate assumption to make?
Yeah, there's definitely, I don't know if I expected things to be perfect, but I think there is definitely, I don't know, you think about even Job and the people who were around him. They're like, man, like, all these things are going so wrong for you.
If bad things happen, then you must have done something.
There is some sort of like, well, what's going on? Because something's going on, and is it me? Because there is a tendency in abuse in a lot of situations too, to like blame yourself. Is it something I did, or is it something external, like what's going on? Like I had always struggled with, and I knew like the theological answers of like, oh, there's evil in the world, and God allows evil in the world, and there's certain amount of things that just happen just because we made that choice and brought the evil into this world, and God wants us to have free choice and all that sort of stuff. So I knew that sort of theologically, but I think it's a little bit different to really be able to wrestle with that in your heart, of like, I guess the mind to heart difference of like, okay, so logically I understand sometimes bad things happen. It doesn't necessarily have maybe a rhyme or reason to it. But what does that mean for me sort of emotionally in my experience with God in that walk?
Just this week I was praying with someone because they keep facing difficulty after difficulty. And he's like, I feel like God's mad at me. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, or if there's a reason for this. And it's that kind of underlining assumption of, if I'm in a good place with you, God, then why are all these things happening? And And then, I'll preach something like God doesn't waste anything. And I believe that. But to say then that God allows certain things, even if they are evil, makes you question, well, then how can you be good if you're allowing this evil? Yeah. So what's the come to Jesus moment? Was this in high school? Was this in college?
Well, at first maybe got a little bit darker because we came back to the States. Mom and Dad were extremely burnt out. They were just like, they knew it was time for them to come back to the States and sort of regroup a little bit. I was getting older, so they were going to be like, okay, she's going to get closer to being, going through high school, going to college. We want to be close to that. And for whatever reason, we ended up in Missouri. They wanted to like get a piece of land and like just deal with animals for a little while. Like,
they were tired of people.
Yeah, they're like, let's just not deal with people. So we did do that for a little bit, kind of pulled away from the world. But before that, I guess we moved to Moberly. I'd never been to Missouri in my life before we moved here, and I didn't know anybody in Moberly.
How old were you?
I was 13. I was 14 by this point. Okay. So I just turned 14. I just said goodbye to everyone I really knew, because for the most part, that was my whole world. We had cousins there, and we had family there too. And
in Greece?
In Greece, yeah. I actually have some cousins that still live there, and we were really close. And I had a lot of... That break wasn't a clean break away from family and from friends. A lot of people felt, like, oh, you're leaving us,
Yeah.
And so it was really hard to step away. And then I found myself in this apartment in this town that I didn't know anyone in the state I'd never been to before. And all our stuff was still in storage. We were building a house pretty much from scratch ourselves. And we were staying in this rental. I had an empty room with a mattress on the floor, and I was just standing there looking out into this town, and I just felt so utterly alone. And the weight of everything just sort of hit me all at once. And I remember thinking, like, do I even want to keep going? And that moment just so scared me, because instantly I'm like, oh, I can't. Obviously I'm not going to do anything because I love my family and I would never want to hurt my family. But like, that's what's holding me on, because I was so broken at that point. I had had so many failed friendships. I had gone through so much stress, seen so much of the church fall apart, and obviously my own pain from the abuse that I went through, and I just felt so utterly broken, and I felt like there was absolutely no one you could trust. Like, even the people you love the most were gonna let you down. Even my parents, who were amazing and did everything they could, like, let me down by letting somebody into... That's not even their fault. I didn't blame them for it, but it's like, everybody, you can't trust anyone. Yeah. And I was just... that moment in that room with like nothing, it was just that mattress on the floor and like the space I didn't know, it just sort of like felt like a picture of exactly what I was feeling like on the inside, just sort of just completely wasted. And it was just in that moment that I felt in my heart God saying, will you trust me? And in that moment, I didn't feel like trusting him.
The answer is no, I don't want to.
I wasn't feeling anything. It was sort of like, at that moment, I was like, well, why not? I
got nothing else.
Yeah. I've got nothing else. I was like, I don't really get this with you. Like, I don't know what's going on. But I'm like, if I was to trust anybody, it would have to be you, because you would be the only one who promises not to actually let me down. And it wasn't that I even felt warm and fuzzy in that moment, or that I felt like it answered all my questions or anything. But that choice was the first moment where I chose. And I was like, I'm going to choose this because I I need a lifeline and I don't have anything else. And it was definitely a desperation choice, but God never let me down.
Can we pause real quick? Because I want to just ask your perspective on this, and Jesse, you can answer too. Because sometimes that moment where you're in that room where you're even thinking, is it worth continuing living? Is it worth continuing going on? I think some of us, and by us I mean Christians, would have the reaction that that's a very non-Christian place to be. But I can think of many characters in the Bible who have found themselves at that exact place. So why is it, do you think, that our like gut reaction is like, this is wrong to almost be in this place, or not a very Christian place to be? Like, you're not allowed to feel that way. Like, why? I don't know, why do we have that kind of sense sometimes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
you got lots of thoughts on
Jesse
that.
ask me, you want to ask me?
You just think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's kind of along the same lines of what you pointed out earlier. It's like we do sort of expect maybe that if we're following God, we're going to at least feel happy, right? Or something. Like there's, you almost feel like you're betraying it. Like if I'm not feeling it right now, like maybe there's something wrong with me. I'm not a good Christian or something, you know? Like I think we do tie the success of our Christian life sometimes to how we feel.
I think it does feel like you just don't have enough faith if you're struggling in that.
Yeah.
If you're struggling, so they seem contradictory.
Yeah.
Yeah, as if the struggle is opposite to the faith.
Yes.
Right.
Macy and I have been married for 14 years now, and I can remember, a moment where it's like you get to a place in your marriage where you're like, I don't like you right now. And early on you'd be like, I would never think that. I will always, and it's like, nah, I don't really like you right now. I mean, I'm gonna love you and I'm gonna, be faithful to you. But sometimes I don't feel that way with God, where it's almost an embarrassment to admit I'm not in a good place with you right now. That analogy breaks down. But I do think many times, parents will ask for prayer for their kids because they're in a really bad spot, or someone will come to me and say, I know I'm not supposed to feel this way, but I'm just really angry with God. And I'm like, why aren't you? Like,
yeah.
He's big enough to handle that. What, Anyway, all right. So
yeah.
You're like, I got nothing else. I need to trust in God. Did anything change? Or was that like this is going to be a slow build?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a slow build. It took me a few months to like really process why I was so angry at God, because I was angry at God.
Yeah.
Like this was not like a warm and cozy alliance of things. It was just like, I'm stuck with you. Like there's nothing else I can do kind of thing. And I'm mad at you. And it took me a while to even admit that. Kind of like you say, like you don't want to admit that you're mad at God. Like, that seems a little presumptuous. Like, oh, well, God,
Yeah.
I know better.
Yeah. Yeah. That even should
like,
have this emotion.
And I was scared. I was scared to even admit that to God. I was scared to come to God with that. And I realized a few months later that the question that I would really want to ask God, and what was holding me back from really fully trusting him, was, where were you? Where were you when I was being sexually abused? Like, what were you doing? Were you just like, I know evil happens, but were you just sitting there like watching? Like, what was going on? And I had so much bitterness because I felt so alone in the injustice of it, and that was really consuming me. I felt very bitter, and so much anger, and I was really, really scared to ask God that question. And when I finally was like in a parking lot, I finally like
a very holy place.
Yeah, those holy places that we come to. But like it was like in the car, and Mom like turned around and she's like, you should just ask God that. Like, but I was like, he's not going to answer me. Like, what? Like, what am I gonna, like a big voice from heaven kind of thing?
Write it in the sand.
Like, God. I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't, like, I was scared. I think I was more scared to not get an answer.
Sure.
You know, like,
because if he
didn't
felt like
care.
he wasn't there
Yeah.
before, why would he care now?
So I don't know. I guess it was another one of those, like, I have nothing to lose kind of moments. And this is a make or break it moment for me. Like, I just need to know the answer to this question. And so I went ahead and I asked God, like, okay, God, like, where were you? Like, in this, like, I need to know this question. I don't need to know why. I don't think we actually need to know why. I think we kind of think we want to know why, but I don't think that really matters. Like, as if like some sort of reason would make anything better. It's like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I can trust the fact that maybe God has good reasons or something down the way that maybe I would recognize.
Sure.
But like, I wanted to know where you were, you know? And I just put that question out there and I just sat there.
Just waiting.
I was just waiting. And in that moment, I suddenly had a scene from a movie that I liked watching at the time just pop into my mind. And it's this really dramatic scene of there's this hero and he's saving people. And he had saved this one person and he'd hidden him away, but he got caught in the process. And so the bad guy comes in and he's like in like a dungeon. So this is like dramatic. He's in the dungeon in chains, and the bad villain comes walking in and he brings in the love of his life. And she's crying, and he leaves them alone. There had been some conflict in the relationship, and so they were sort of reconciling, and she was just like, he's gonna kill you, you need to tell him what he wants to know. And she's just sobbing because she wants to be with him, and he was gonna die. And he just looks at her and he wipes away her tears and says, he knew that your tears would be my worst possible torture. And I just sat there with those words ringing in my head. He knew that your tears would be my worst possible torture. And I knew in my heart that, like, those were the words meant for me that moment, that God was saying that he was crying there with me. That's where he was. And he was there with me. And in that moment, I felt seen. I felt, I could feel him there with me in the pain. And I didn't have answers still. And it didn't really matter that I didn't have answers, because he had kept his promise to never leave me or forsake me. He'd been there. And that's when I knew that it didn't really matter what happened, that I was going to always love him and serve him, because I could trust him. And that's where that trust was finally built for me, because I knew that no matter what we went through, no matter what kind of stress or suffering or whatever, he was there through it. He wasn't asking me to do it alone. Wow.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
The concept that I am hurt when my children are hurt. Sorry, my phone's going off here. Is a powerful one. And yeah, I can't figure out what movie that was.
It's a very obscure movie.
I was gonna say, at first I thought maybe it was like the Count of Monte Cristo, and then I was trying to go through my head of what this was.
He missed the rest of the story. He was stuck on.
Well, that's interesting that you say like the rest. Not that it doesn't matter. Obviously, all those questions matter, but it doesn't matter as much as knowing the answer to where were you through this. Because I imagine there's still things that you had to work through.
Oh, yeah.
Trusting people, and then you become a mom, and it's like, okay, well, how am I going to be a mom? And then, how am I going to deal with these relational things? How do I love the church still? I'm sure that's been a huge thing for you.
Yeah.
How do I love people even knowing they're going to fail me?
Yeah.
Is a huge thing as well. So, but it's amazing when you at least can have the trust in God that a lot of those things fall into place.
Yeah, I wish I could say like, oh, then my life was happy. You know, like,
Well, you hadn't met Kyle yet, so once you met him, everything was
good.
Easy.
No, I mean, like we went through a lot together. Even Kyle and I mean, like, financial stress, miscarriage. I've gone through like 10 years of chronic health issues since then, and it took me a long time to really come back to the church. Like you said, like I took a break for a long time. It wasn't that I ever gave up on God, but I didn't come to church because I
just needed to be around animals and not people. Is that?
It's something God's still working on me, because I realize ever since, I don't know, sort of becoming an adult and started making my own decisions, I sort of made maybe a secret vow to myself that I would never put myself in dangerous situations again. Like I wasn't going to allow myself to get hurt. And so that involves cutting a lot of people out.
Sure.
And the community of the church is messy, and it's supposed to be messy because we're all like hurting people trying to get together and love God, but very, very imperfectly. And it took me a long time to be able to just accept that for what it was, and to realize, no, like we actually need each other. You can't just do it alone. And it's only been the last few years that I've started coming back regularly and doing that. It's one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:3-5, I think. I hopefully got the numbers right, but it says that, and I'll paraphrase it, but we rejoice in suffering because suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and it's a hope that doesn't disappoint. And I really wrestled with that verse, and I never understood it, and I was like, what the heck is it even talking about? And it wasn't until sort of hindsight, after I had done a lot of this healing and going and processing and stuff, that I looked back and I was like, oh my goodness, like it's true. Like that first step is endurance. It's that choice. Like I just had to choose. Like at some point you're not feeling it. You have to choose. What are you going to do with this? Like you're going to have to put one foot in front of the other, because that's all you can do in that moment is make another choice to trust God. Like I don't feel it, I'm trusting God. I'm not feeling it, I'm trusting God. And some point during that line, it does create character. It changes who you are. And then you're a person that trusts God no matter what. And then when you're a person that trusts God no matter what, suddenly you have a hope that doesn't disappoint, because God doesn't disappoint.
Yeah.
God never lets you down. He is always with you, even if you don't feel it. And so that process of just gets ingrained in your brain. So every time you get into some more suffering, because there is always more suffering, there is always more difficulties, but each time it gets like a tiny bit easier in some ways, because you can look back at the past and be like, I felt this way before, I made the choice, I kept going, and God proved himself true. It's like, I think, you probably could tell me if this is wrong, but I feel like somebody told me sometime that like the most often repeated command in the Bible was to remember. And I think that is critical. It's everything, because we forget to remember God's faithfulness, to remember what he did is what gives us hope in the future, and keeps us moving forward. And so it's like every step he kind of, breaks down another layer of your shield and is uncomfortable, and I always hate it. Not every time I like come up against something, it's like, even just for me, like coming onto this podcast or going back to, it's a big step for me to be like, no, I'm going to choose to enter my community, because I want to share this hope that God has given me. Like I'm sitting over here just hiding it under a bowl because I don't want to get hurt again.
Yeah.
But like I have all this hope and all this joy that God has given me, and I want to share my story. I want to be a part of my community, because not because I know that it's going to result in something that could bring more suffering, even sharing your heart with somebody or sharing your story with people, but that it's me and God, and we got this. We're going through it.
Yeah, that's really powerful. The idea of how how sometimes the temptation is, all right, if I've experienced something negative and don't ever want to experience it again, I'm never going back. And somehow we can keep ourselves from experiencing those things. And the reality is you're going to experience suffering one way or the other. And God prepares you for it. He trains you through it. And, not that we want to experience that in a church or community setting, but when people disappoint you, it teaches you something. When people fail you, it teaches you something about yourself and about God and about others. And I understand the feeling of like, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through that again.
There can be kind of a questioning of God, why you lead me here too. I was reading through Joseph's story just this morning, and I was reading the part where it was actually at the end of the story where Jacob is trying to decide whether he should go down to Egypt, and God's like, go, I'm going to be with you, and you're going to be okay, and I will bring you back out. Now, God didn't say at all in that whole part, like the whole, like, okay, now your kids are going to get enslaved while they're down there,
Right.
But like, again, it's always that God never promises us no suffering. He just always promises us that He'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. And maybe if He would have known what would have happened, He wouldn't have gone. But Egypt, even though it was filled with suffering, was a time that was purposeful for them, where they grew as a nation, where they multiplied, where they suffered together. And then that became really a building block for the promise of the promised land. And then ultimately coming and us receiving Jesus. So we can't always see that, nor do we have the ability to carry it, even if we could see it.
Yeah, hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had two questions kind of to wrap up just a little bit of this story. First is, and maybe you've already done this exercise, but if you could go back to 10, 11-year-old Kelci and speak to her, what would you say to her? And that's really even just encouraging people here that have dealt with abuse, or maybe they're still hiding under a rock because they don't want to open up that can of worms to even think about what's happened in their life. What would you say to her and then to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a hard one, because I feel like the impulse is to be like, it's going to be okay,
Sure.
And I think people often, when we're suffering, even though it's true, it's hard to hear in that moment. You just need somebody to sit there and be like, this is really terrible. You need somebody to cry with you when you're crying. You need somebody to just carry those burdens with you. I think that as Christians, we often quick jump to the hope part and not to like the grieving together part. Yeah. And there's a lot. Grief is really, really uncomfortable. It's not something we want to sit in, and that's exactly.
We want to solve it. And it's not solvable.
We don't want to bring the answers. We want to solve it. We want to skip to the happy part where there's hope. And I think that's sometimes where I think us as Christians, we can come across a little tone deaf to people that are suffering. Yeah. So, I mean, if I was there with her, I essentially would be just crying with her and holding her. And, I just be allowing myself to grieve in that moment. And then, you start to just, speak the truth. Again, the endurance part of like, okay, like let's choose to take this to God. Let's choose to take that next step. Because as long as you can point somebody to God and be like, just take it to God. Like, you might not have an answer for it. He won't let you down. He's always promised, and He will come through for you.
Yeah. In I can't remember the name of the book. Jesse, do you remember in Matt's class, in their book class, they're reading the biography of a woman who...
Johnny Erickson Tata.
She it's a quadriplegic. She jumped into a pond or a pool and was paralyzed, and she is the oldest living quadriplegic. She's still alive today, and a lot of people attribute that to her attitude. And of course, she went through a season of intense bitterness and depression and why God and where were you and all of that. And then eventually made the choice to say, okay, well, if this is my life now, how do I walk with you, God, with this? And, has had a ministry, has been able to encourage lots of people, has done some incredible things because of endurance, saying, well, I don't want to give up. I don't know what the future looks like, but whatever I have, I'm going to use it for the glory of God. And even if I feel like God has taken things from me, or put things in my life I didn't want there, I didn't want this to be my story. I don't want to be the person that's the quadriplegic. I didn't want to be the survivor of abuse. I didn't want to be these things, but I am. So, how do I walk with God through this? Is pretty powerful. For someone who has been afraid to ask the questions that they're scared to ask God, maybe it's about abuse, or maybe it's about where were you, or find themselves in that moment, what would you encourage someone who's scared to ask the hard questions to God?
Definitely ask. I don't
Is that
know.
easy?
I don't know if you will. I can't promise you God will answer you like the way He answered in my story. God meets us. God knows what you need. I do think the scariest part is working up the courage to ask, because you are afraid that God isn't going to show up. There's a lot of fear in that. And, I think, man, I don't really know what possessed me to ask the question, but I did, so sometimes also just being patient and waiting for the answer takes time. Yeah. I wouldn't scare away from asking the question, though, because that's like you said kind of briefly earlier, like that's the whole story of like half the biblical characters. It's the man who wrestles with God, the man who asks all the questions, and you read all the Psalms and it's just like, why, God? Like, all my enemies are just like at they're doing great and I'm over here suffering. I was just reading one this morning. It was just like, he was bitter too. He was like, I'm feeling bitter. I don't get it. And I really like going to the Psalms for that reason, actually, because I was like, I can relate to this. I feel that. But he comes back around, and he always comes back to those truths. But the answer in that psalm that I read actually was, I saw the end. God let me see the end, and I realized that the only two options at the very end, when you boil everything down, is either God or no God. And I chose God, and I realized that my bitterness was, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but the bitterness was attached to wanting something other than God. Wanting, because we do want happiness in this world. We want to not feel suffering. We want to even justice, even things that are good or something. But as long as if it's not God, then we do get better. But He promises Himself, and so you at least have that.
Yeah. To go back to the first question about why do we even have the assumption that we wouldn't go through difficult things or experience evil? I think that it's almost a misnomer, because we recognize, I think most people recognize, most good things that we want are difficult to get, and you have to go through difficulty to achieve really anything that we feel like is good. You garden, and I think it is the most evil thing in all the world to pull weeds and then to go back out the next day and there's more weeds. And it's like, if you want to build a beautiful home, or you want a community of people, like a healthy community of people, if you want to be an athlete and to succeed, it requires suffering in some form. Those are all the things that we willingly suffer for because we want them in the end. But the world that we live in, and even just our lives and how even our physical bodies, we go through difficulties. And maybe it's that longing for heaven. It's like we long for some place, somewhere where we won't have to experience these things anymore. And I think that's why it's so important when God's like, I understand and I'm with you, and my strength is sufficient for you in those times of weakness. But it gets really real, and we don't I don't always want it to be real. I don't want to learn the lessons through the suffering. But well, thank you for sharing some of your story. I know that it's not easy to do, but I appreciate your heart and wanting to step into your community, but also to be a hope for other people who, I don't know, maybe feel like what they've gone through disqualifies them, or what they've gone through has just created a wedge between them and God, when it can be the thing that brings it closer together. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Jesse, thank you for joining us. And thank you all for joining us this week on the Ripple Effect podcast. And we will have more stories to come. And we hope that this testimony has been encouraging to you. And if you see Kelci with her beautiful boys at church, be encouraging, say hi, and I don't know if you'll want to talk to them, but
Sure.
If she's like, I'm not ready for this conversation,
I might be pulled in 3 directions.
Yeah, I'd say it's more about the boys than anything. Yeah, absolutely, they're amazing. But thank you for being here, guys. We'll see you next week on the Ripple Effect podcast, and we hope you tune in. See you later.